148. Let's take a look at one word problem together before you move on to independent practice. So in this word problem, we have Mr. James and Mr. Durant are comparing the size of their rectangular gardens. So the first information that we have is that we are comparing two rectangular gardens. So let's underline that piece of information. Mr. James finds that the length of his garden is 10 more than twice the width. So the length of Mr. James's garden is 10 more than twice the width. Mr. Durant's garden has the same length as Mr. James's garden, but the width of Mr. Durant's garden is 5 less than 3 times the length. So we do have a lot going on here. Let's read it one more time before we look at what we are going to be doing with this information. Mr. James and Mr. Durant are comparing the size of their rectangular gardens. So we know we have two. Mr. James finds that the length of his garden is 10 more than twice the width. Mr. Durant's garden has the same length as Mr. James's garden, but the width of Mr. Durant's garden is 5 less than 3 times the length. So it can be overwhelming to have so much information presented to you all at once. So the best way to solve a word problem is to actually start drawing pictures to represent the scenario. And that's exactly what we're asked to do in part A. It says draw a picture to represent both gardens. Let X be the length of Mr. James's garden. So we can tell by reading this word problem that Mr. James's garden is slightly smaller than Mr. Durant's. So I've drawn two different sized rectangles for a bit more accuracy here. So let's start labeling with the information that we're given. So the first thing that we're told is that Mr. James finds that the length of his garden is 10 more than twice the width. And we were told in part A to let X my apologies. I'm not sure what happened to the last image that I had. So once again, we have these two rectangular gardens, and the first thing that we're told is that the length of Mr. James's garden is 10 more than twice the width. Since we don't know what the actual value of the width is, we were told to let X be the length of the garden. So cross this out. Cross out the word length on your handout and write width, because X would represent the width since that's the information that we don't have. So with X being the width of Mr. James's garden, 10 more than twice the width would be represented by 2X, so that's twice the width, plus 10. Then we're told that Mr. Durant's garden has the same length. So the length of his garden is also 2X plus 10. And the part that's different is the width of Mr. Durant's garden is 5 less than 3 times the length. So we're going to be subtracting 5 from 3 times the length. And notice that the length is represented by this expression 2x plus 10. So we're going to triple 2x plus 10 and then subtract 5 from it. So the width would be represented by 3 times 2x plus 10, then minus 5. So for part B, we're asked to find the perimeters of both gardens. So we have two different gardens to find the perimeter for. So remember, in perimeter, we are finding the distance around the shape. So we're adding up all the side lengths. So if I know that my width for Mr. James's garden is X, then the opposite side of that rectangular garden is also a width of X. The length is 2X plus 10, so again we have 2X plus 10 as the width on the opposite side. So one way that we can represent this expression is by actually writing out all the sides and adding them up. But notice we have 2 times whatever the width is plus 2 times whatever the length is. So that's 2x plus, we have to use distributive property to eliminate the parentheses, 4x plus 20. So So finally, by combining our like terms, we have 6x plus 20 that represents Mr. James's garden. So Mr. Durant's garden might seem a little bit more complicated. So we just learned how to use our grouping symbols, and we know we are doubling each side. So we have 2 times 2x plus 10. And because we already have parentheses in our width, we're going to be using a bracket here and multiply by 2 on the outside. So the total perimeter would be 2 times 2x plus 10 for the length, plus 2 bracket. My apologies, guys. Having some technical difficulties with my iPad. So again, because we know that for perimeter we have 2 sides that measure to 2x plus 10 right across from each other, and 2 sides that measure 3 times 2x plus 10 minus 5 on the opposite side, all we have to do is double these amounts. So we're going to double 2x plus 10, and we're going to double the measurement of our width. So I'm going to use brackets since we already have parentheses. So we're going to use distributive property and have 4x plus 20 plus 2. We have to simplify our inside before we eliminate our brackets. So we have 6x plus 30 minus 5. So now we have 4x plus 20 plus 2. We're combining our constants, which are 30 minus 5, to get positive 25. And now finally, to eliminate the brackets, we're going to distribute the 2 out front. So don't mind this part C over here. I'm just going to continue working over it. We have 4x plus 20 plus 12x plus 50 after we've distributed. And now finally, to find the perimeter of Mr. Durant's garden, we're going to combine our like terms. We have 4x plus 12x, which is 16x, and we have 20 plus 50, which is positive 70. So the perimeter of Mr. Durant's garden can be represented by 16x plus 70. Okay, I know this has been a really long problem, but bear with me, guys. We are almost done. So for part C, in terms of x, what is the difference between Mr. Durant's garden and Mr. James's garden? So that word difference tells us that we are going to be subtracting our our gardens here. So specifically, we're looking for the difference of Mr. Durant and Mr. James's. So Mr. Durant's garden was represented by 16x plus 70 minus the perimeter of Mr. James's garden, which was 6x plus 20. So one thing to be really careful with here is when we are subtracting two terms, what you must do is distribute this negative to each term on the inside of our parentheses. So we have 16x plus 70 minus 6x minus 20. So now that we have eliminated our parentheses, we can go on ahead and combine our like terms. 16x minus 6x gives us 10x. Positive 70 minus 20 gives us a positive 50. So the difference between the two gardens, or the perimeter of the two gardens, is 10x plus 50. So your classwork for today is to continue practicing simplifying expressions in this first station, and once you have completed that, you are going to spiral review linear relationships. So please remember that this video is available on YouTube, and if you just search my first name and last name, which is Mary Basmajian, You'll have access to this super long and boring video. I know the word problems can be a little tough sometimes, but we have to bear through them. And the future lessons that we'll have for this unit. So be sure to check those out. Have a great day.